Hello and welcome to the Gopher Gold podcast. This is Matty J, along with my co-hosts Dane and Corey. We have an exciting show tonight, just talking about a great week in Gopher football. Big win for our Gophers over Michigan State, and coming up on homecoming week to face a Purdue team that the Gophers are favored by double digits over. So we got a lot to talk about. Let's dive right into it. Michigan State, a lot of questions going into that game, and I think the Gophers answered all of them, if not questions that we didn't even know to ask. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Just looking at that game, I mean, any Gopher fan's gonna be just astonished by what we did to a Big Ten team. It's not very often where you, especially as a Gopher fan, you see us go to a Big Ten, on a road game, go to a Big Ten foe and absolutely eviscerate them. I mean, it was a shutout until the last play of the drive or the last play of the game, and we were playing our number twos. So that's as good of a game script as you want as a Gopher fan.
The Gophers, speaking to that, the Gophers defense, the starting defense has not allowed a touchdown all season.
the
I
only
I think
yeah
one of
the
you guys
only
tweeted that out, but we literally all three of the touchdowns we've given up have been in the fourth quarter against our backup defense.
yeah, and the only 3 points that they have given up was off of it was against Western Illinois, and our offense fumbled it at the 35-yard line, I believe. Our defense moved them back almost 10 yards out of field goal range. They did absolutely their part to move them back, and then we got called for a roughing the passer call, which was very that was an outrageous call, which gave them, and then we held them to a field goal. We didn't give them any yards, but other than that, yeah, our defense is basically given a shutout. Our starting defense, so kudos to them. Joe Rossi doesn't get enough credit nationally, and people are still calling Michigan State now. They changed the script that Michigan State's a bad team and Minnesota's still not for real. I mean, I've been seeing it all over Twitter. I've seen it all over national news, even that Minnesota is not a real team, and it's like, what more do you have to prove?
Daner, I saw you mention on Twitter PJ Fleck is building a beast of a program here at Minnesota. It got a lot of attention on there. Tell me what you liked on Saturday.
Well, when when we interviewed Connor, we were both predicting closer wins, which I would have put money down that I felt very confident about the Gophers winning a close game, covering the spread. I believe it was -3, but I had 21-17. I thought that I didn't expect Tanner Morgan to look as poised as he did. I expected Mo to do what he did, Bryce Williams, Trayson Potts, those guys. But Quinn Carroll impressed the crap out of me. I thought both guards played really well. Um, I was so impressed watching that game. That's one of my favorite games I've watched of the Fleck era. I always talk about that Georgia Tech game, the Detroit bowl game. That's one of my favorites. Auburn, one of my favorites. I
The
think
the
this is right up there.
the Detroit Bowl.
Yeah, so look, that's a bowl game that no one wants to be in. But I remember, I think we just came off an axe win against Wisconsin. We had a lot of momentum. Georgia Tech was, phasing out their old coach, and our guys were like, "Shit, we want to be here." Daniel Falalele's first game starting, I believe, put a guy into the turf. Mo Ibrahim coming out party to start his career. I got a lot of those vibes during this game, but the difference is this is not a triple option team. This is not a small team. We pushed around a legitimate Big Ten team. And Tanner Morgan, like I said, he looked amazing. These timing routes that he was throwing into Dalen Wright on the comeback, the 2 touchdowns that he threw to Daniel Jackson, who, by the way, Daniel Jackson, I wouldn't have thought as a guy that would assume that wide receiver role as well as he did. I'm pretty blown away. I was not expecting that whatsoever. Even though I thought they were going to win the game, they completely blew up my expectations.
Well, how about all the wide receiver targets that we've given? I mean,
Yeah.
Nick Calrup, where did he come out of? That catch that he had in the end zone was phenomenal. I mean, absolutely phenomenal. And he's assuming the O'Keefe role. O'Keefe wasn't really a passing threat. Obviously, now he's an NFL tight end, but he's not that pass catching type. But Nick Calrup, he showed that he has some hands. That wasn't an easy catch, and
Yeah.
and I'll be the first one to admit when I'm wrong. I was a big Tanner Morgan critic last year and the year past, but I've also said for years that Tanner Morgan is he's the epitome of a system quarterback, and that's nothing to. I'm not discrediting Tanner at any at all. I think he's done exactly what he's asked to do with the scheme, and I think Kirk Shiraka coming back, you can see the confidence in him. I mean, even those third down conversions where he's running it, like he even impresses me how fast he is. Like I
Yeah.
never knew he had that speed before. So he's done a fantastic job this year.
That third down run by Tanner early in the game was vital. I mean, the start that we got off to, I think, dictated the rest of the game, and that start doesn't happen if that drive stalls out. Because I think we had there's a big penalty on one of the O linemen that kind of set that drive back, and then it was like 3rd and 12, and Tanner out of nowhere pulls it down, sneaks up the middle, and gets that first down. And from that point forward, it was just like anything we wanted, we had. But he continues. We talked about when Chris Ottman Bell went down. How are we going to replace his production? Who's going to step up? And I think the answer was pretty resounding on Saturday that it's not going to be one guy. What Kirk is going to do and what Tanner's going to do is have nice combinations of routes with a lot of different guys that do different things well, and allow Tanner to go through his progressions, make his reads, and just put the ball where it needs to be. So we saw early a lot of really nice kind of medium crossing routes from Brevin Spann Ford, connected on 2 of them. And like Daner said, the comebacks to Dalen Wright, Michael Brown-Stevens was kind of the chain mover, just consistently making short and intermediate grabs. So I was just really impressed with the game calling from Kirk and the execution by Tanner. That offense is just flowing right now.
Yeah, offensive line kept Tanner protected the whole game too. I mean, if you take away that, I mean, you have to take away that face mask sack that Michigan State got. 0 sacks allowed. I'd like to see the stats on the pressures. I didn't really notice many pressures. And Brevin Spann Ford, to Ryan Burns' credit, is a slam dunk NFL draft pick. That guy, I want to say that he was worth a touchdown himself against Michigan State. The way that he was setting the edge on the blocks, particularly he had a guy locked up for about 4 seconds as Mo Ibrahim was taking that outside stretch zone to the left to set up a scoring drive, and just the improvement that he's done blocking has been unbelievable. I love the way that he's getting involved in the passing game, strong hands. The way that if I hadn't known Minnesota football history in the last 20 years, just watching them, they look like what you'd see of an SEC team right now. Just rock solid in the line of scrimmage. All 3 running backs, I feel very comfortable. I actually feel like Bryce Williams is our second best running back right now. He's a guy who, I think he iced Wisconsin years ago, iced Nebraska last year. that guy's got some wheels and he's got vision to go with it this year. So I'm extremely excited to watch him. But we haven't even mentioned the defense yet, and I'm going to wait for that. But just offensively, that's where the question marks were. Um, and and another thing I'd like to plug too is Joe Klatt. If anyone can
Yes,
search him on Twitter, what he had to say about us, that was
Yep.
just resounding.
Yeah, I was actually gonna bring up Joe Klatt. I was gonna bring it up and mention it here, but yeah, he has a lot to say about the Gophers. He has ever since the beginning of the year, basically. But there's everyone talks. I keep seeing a lot of things on Twitter that is the Gophers better than what they were last year, and it's you can make an argument with the defense, but the offense, it's night and day difference. I mean, just comparing the team, let's just look at it as a basic standpoint. Not even like Dane said, this is an SEC team or whatever you want to call it. Joe Klatt said, they need to stay healthy to be a Big Ten contender. And I don't even know if we need to do that. Like he said, that their only weakness is they're not full of 5 and 4 stars. I don't even know if we need to stay healthy. This is a knock on wood. We need everyone, I hope, stays healthy. But this is the deepest team we've ever seen, ever. I mean, you look at all the teams that separate themselves, like an Illinois, an Iowa, or a Wisconsin, I could say Illinois is one of the best teams in the West right now, but what they lack is they literally don't have any depth, at all. Once their ones are down, they're down to nothing. And even Wisconsin, when they were really good, and even Iowa, if you have an injury in a spot, it's a glaring weakness. Even in 2019, we had that same thing. We had, if we had a bang up, it was a weakness for us, and teams exposed that. I don't see a drop off at any position. And people say, "What about quarterback?" What I think our quarterback position is still even Granted, I love what Tanner Morgan's doing. I'm not saying that he's not a good quarterback, but I love our depth there. Looking at Purdue, look at what Purdue has done this last game against FAU. They were without Aiden O'Connell, and they struggled mightily. Their offense did not click. I feel like we will not see that drop off if we had an injury with Tanner Morgan, if we had an injury with anyone, even Mo Ibrahim. We still have viable guys that can produce and play at a high level.
Corey, I think that injury rant just scared about every single one of our listeners, and it scared me as well. if we start getting some injuries, you're gonna have pitchforks out for you, man.
I'll take the credit, but you know what you guys know, everyone knows what I mean. If you deep dive on this roster, I mean, look at what we're rotating for guys. It definitely is a strength when you rotate that many guys and you keep people fresh, but it also is a testament to your development and to how deep you are. And we are deep all over. I mean, even the O-line. You see guys rotating in on O-line. How often do you see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing to rotate in, and another thing to ask backups to play an entire game because the starter went down. So, I mean, I agree with you. This is the deepest team we've had in a long, long time. Certainly of the PJ Fleck era. But if guys start going down, we're gonna feel the effects of that. So let's
That's why I
knock on
said
wood
knock on
there.
wood. I'm just saying, that's the biggest thing from a national media standpoint is our biggest issue is what Joe Klatt says is staying healthy. Even that is not a glaring concern. That's that's unheard of as a Gopher fan. That's just what I'm trying to make.
Yeah. I hear you. Speaking of, I just wanted to bring this up because I want to get your guys' thoughts on this. Dana, you mentioned that we kind of look like an SEC team out there, And it's got me thinking a few times as I've been watching the games, and I've been watching a ton of college football this year. It almost feels like we're kind of following the Georgia model in terms of a team build. If you look at, I mean, clearly we do not have the recruiting level of Georgia or the guys that Georgia has. I'm not trying to say that, but from the way we've built our team and the way we play football, it's very similar. They rotate multiple
Absolutely.
backs. They have really incredible running backs that can rotate in and out. They've got a quarterback that is not the most athletically gifted quarterback, but he's smart and makes good reads. They've got no real standout at wide receiver. Adonai Mitchell, I believe his name is really good. But they've just got a kind of a bevy of talent there, good tight ends, and then they just have some absolute stars on defense, and they're just play lights out defense. And so it almost feels like we've taken that, watched what Georgia did the last year or two to kind of elevate from where they were as a really good SEC team, and then they elevated to like the best SEC team or one of two of the top two teams in the SEC.
There's this is what I'm gonna say. I agree with you 100% on what they're trying to do. There's three facets to the game. It's coaching, which is like the scheme and everything. It's development, and then it's recruiting and the high star players or recruiting the high star kids. Minnesota has definitely the top two. They've got the coaching and they got the development. And I think they're one of the best development programs in the country. I think the Big Ten West develops. I think the Big Ten West develops the best in the country. We might not have those high end players, but we also are senior. Like, we have a lot of seniors and a lot of upperclassmen where those Georgias and those Alabamas don't have. We have, I think, our starters. I just looked at. I'll shout out Badger fan Coach Riley. He had a tweet out, and I think we were the most in the Big Ten with 15 starters who are seniors or higher. And we have a lot of super seniors, like everyone knows. A lot of those teams do not. A lot of those teams in the South do not. They just don't keep those guys around a long time. And if they do, like, they transfer out somewhere else. Yeah, because there's someone else beating them out. The thing that I see is, this is going to sound very homeristic of me, and this is going to probably be, this is a hot take, but I think this team has a shot. I'm not kidding. I think this team has a shot to be a college football playoff contender team, just with how good we are playing right now. The efficiency that our team is playing right now, it's unmatched. There's probably not a better team that's been more efficient. Granted, everyone's going to say, what about our opponents? What about all this stuff? I just saw a guy who tweeted out an efficiency tweet for adding in the opponents for their rankings, and we're still way up there. I really don't know of any team that's been more efficient. We have 3 punts all season long. 3. We did not win one last game.
We've been insanely good. There's no denying that. It's a hot take. I can see where you're coming from. I'll wait to see how we do at Penn State, against Iowa, at Wisconsin.
Absolutely.
This team, the Michigan State game was tough. We talked about it early on in the year, how that was going to be kind of a turning point game for this program of like how the season would go. And we clearly handled that pressure really well. But I don't think the pressure of going into Michigan State is anything compared to the pressure of going into the whiteout game, or the pressure that looms over their heads of not having beaten Iowa for a few years, or the pressure that's going to come going into Camp Randall with a Wisconsin team that's going to hear for the next few weeks about how Minnesota's the favorite in the West and might be able to play spoiler and get the axe back. And until this team shows me that they can handle those types of pressure situations, I'm not quite ready to say they're a college football playoff team, even as a hot take. But I do think this team right now is a top, back half top 10, top 15 team. I think the way they're playing is outstanding. The leadership they have on offense with Mo and Tanner is fantastic. The biggest question marks for me coming into the season was going to be how does the offensive line hold up, and would Joe Rossi be able to replace a lot of the defensive talent we lost, and continue to have his scheme work. And I think both of those questions have been answered early on, regardless of opponent strength or whatever else you want to question about it. The offensive line has been terrific. They just held up against Michigan State, who, even if you think they're not as good as they were ranked in the preseason and were touted before that Washington game, it's still a Big Ten team, and a team that was top 25 last year and had a lot of talent. The offensive line pushed them around and controlled them all game. So
that's their strength too. Michigan State dealing.
Absolutely. And can I add to that? The player who I rewatched this game probably 3 times. That's just how I am. And I try to look at every position and try to look at what they do on every play. And I thought our worst offensive lineman was Ursary. Ariante Ursary, I think, did the worst job. And that's not saying, oh, he did terrible. Like, I think everyone on that offensive line did so well that it made him look glaringly concerning. And I think he has the highest upside. And he's only going to get better all season. So that's a very big kudos to our offensive line, I think, saying that they played very, very well. I did not expect this from Quinn Carroll.
To be fair, Ursary was going up against Jacoby Windman from Michigan State a lot.
Yeah,
which is a tough assignment. So
no, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right though. I mean, they held their own, and we've talked about the offense at length, but going to that second point of how Joe Rossi's defense would translate from some lower class non-conference opponents to a real Big Ten opponent in Michigan State. And I mean, it showed. I mean, no touch. Their only touchdown was on the last play of the game. Their only points of the entire game. To do that against a team, Michigan State's not a bad offensive team. Jarek Broussard and Jalen Berger were running for 150 to 200 yards a game combined. Peyton Thorne threw for 3,000 yards last year. Jaden Reed came back, their top wide receiver. Keon Coleman is a legitimate NFL prospect. He's an absolute monster at wide receiver. Malik Carr is a really talented tight end. Like, that's a good offense that the Gopher defense just completely shut down. You look at the stats from that game: 14 carries for 38 yards for Michigan State running the ball. Peyton Thorne was 17 of 24 for 132 yards and 2 picks, a QBR of 11. It wasn't until that last drive of the game when Noah Kim, Michigan State's backup, actually I think he's third string, came into the game and was just kind of dumping it off against a prevent second and third string, the Gophers D, when they started moving the ball. So, I mean, to do that against a legitimate offensive team in Michigan State is really impressive. And I think that alone is going to makes the Gophers a top 10 to 15 team, because that defense is stout.
Yeah. What I really liked is that they keep everything in front of them. I think it was the first defensive drive of the game. I believe it was 3rd and 7. You saw Michigan State kind of dump off a 4-yard crosser, and you had 5 Gopher defenders right there. Just, it looked like a cover 2 sink, something like that. And it looked like it was 1-on-5. There was no way that he was getting to the first down marker. They just made a gang tackle right there. I felt confident that Rossi's defense was going to translate, because he says it all the time that his main goals are to keep everything in front of them basically eliminating large plays and stop the run. So typically those are the goals of every D coordinator, but when you see these actions being turned into game film where 38 rushing yards, and then that average yards per completion for Thorne was pretty damn low. They were keeping everything in front of them, and even Thomas Rush was able to get in on plays like that. When you have defensive ends that can leave their pass rushing assignment and help in stopping a guy before the sticks, I mean, that's special. Thomas Rush is a special athlete. I'm just Matty, you mentioned the 3 games in our schedule that we still need to prove a lot at Penn State, at Wisconsin, and Iowa. The things that will always translate in football is your rock solid defense that Rossi has in the run game. So Tanner Morgan, if he's able to throw like that, if he's not, I mean, who knows? I can't exactly predict that at this moment, but Mo Ibrahim has carved Wisconsin in his career. Iowa is an elite defense, but just think about if you're able to end drives with points half the time against Iowa, I feel very confident that's a win. At Penn State, if you're able to just soak up the clock, move the ball on the ground, and you've got this elite defense that we're talking about, I feel much better about our chances. I don't think I'm going to say college football playoff like Corey is, but if
Come
we have
on,
a chance to,
don't throw me under the bus like that.
hey, if it hits, then that's gonna age legendary. But to say that, I watched Ohio State versus Wisconsin. They looked scary as hell. Um, they're basically able to deploy these 5-star athletes, but coach them in the same manner that we were able to. That's scary. That is, to get to that point is another thing to accomplish. But I think that we can play with any team in this conference, and probably besides Ohio State right now. I know that we beat them up a little bit last year, but this defense and the running game, the two things that are always going to translate. So that's what has us feeling so optimistic.
Yeah, well, that's a good segue here to talking about the rest of the Big Ten here in Week 4. We looking across the Big Ten, Illinois won big against Chattanooga. We mentioned Ohio State blowing out Wisconsin. Michigan won a tight one over Maryland. Penn State beat Central Michigan. Indiana lost. Iowa beat Rutgers. Northwestern lost to a MAC team, Miami of Ohio, and Purdue barely squeaked by Florida Atlantic. Looking across the Big Ten, I wouldn't say there's a ton of surprises. The bad teams were either in tight games or lost close ones to other bad teams. But for me, the biggest takeaway is not really from the West. It's from the East. Maryland is legit, and what they're building over there. Maryland always gets a lot of talent because that DC, Baltimore area produces a lot of football talent, and Maryland's always recruited pretty well. It seems that they're starting to deploy that in the right way. They
You know,
hung right in there with Michigan.
yeah, I don't wanna pump myself up or anything, but I had Maryland going 9 wins this year, and I had a lot of backlash at that. And I still feel very confident with Maryland at 9 wins because I watched their offensive line. Their offensive line going into this year, I felt were going to be very, very good. Like one of the best in the conference, good. And people just did not believe that. They just could not fathom that they'd have that good of offensive line. They do. And they have a I'm not going to say they have an elite running back or a running back room, but when you have good linemen, you can do anything with that. And their offense is just explosive, and their defense is just stout enough that I feel like they're going to beat a team. They're going to beat their crossover. I have a feeling, and this is what I predicted going into the season, that they'd beat Wisconsin. They're going to beat Michigan State. They're going to beat every team besides Ohio State and Michigan. and they gave Michigan a run for their money.
Yeah, they did.
It wouldn't surprise me. I mean, they're going to cause problems for a lot of teams because the offensive talent they have. Tagovailoa is really. I mean, he's a talented quarterback.
He's probably a second or third round draft pick. I mean,
I don't know if he's going to go that high because he's old. He's going to be an older prospect, and
he's a lefty.
He hasn't.
Yeah, but you turn it, you flip his throwing motion is as good as it gets. He just has a knack. I mean, you got to look at his rankings and his statistics with a grain of salt at Maryland. You know, you got to give him an up, almost kind of like the FCS quarterbacks always do. They always get while they're playing against lower competition, they don't have very much talent around them type of thing. Like, he's playing against tough competition, and he didn't for most of his career have talent around him. Now he does, and he's showing it.
Yeah, we'll see. I think he's a day 3 guy. I just don't think he does a good enough job of progressing through reads and making big time throws. His throwing motion's pretty incredible. I mean, he can put some zip on the ball, and he's fairly mobile.
Absolutely.
But I think he's a better college quarterback than he ever will be an NFL quarterback. But you know, the problem for us is he is a college quarterback right now. You know, fortunately, we avoid Maryland. But what's nice is
thank God.
Maryland.
I don't like that matchup at all.
Yeah, Maryland could beat some of those teams like Wisconsin, who has to play them. And quite frankly, after Wisconsin just got picked apart by Ohio State, you know, a team like Maryland should scare the hell out of Badger fans.
So I'm going to say this on the record. I've been saying it off the record for a long time, but Illinois is the second best team in the West. We're a clear top 1. Illinois is the second best team. I think if Illinois can prove it this week against Wisconsin, I don't know if they do, just because it's on the road. But I still, even if they lose, I still stand by they're the second best team in the Big Ten West, just because I think they're the most well-rounded team in the Big Ten West, besides us. They don't have the explosiveness of a lot of teams. They may not have. I mean, they're almost like Wisconsin offensively, but a little bit more of a passing threat. And their defense they're stingy. They're very stingy. I mean, let's not forget that they did lose to Indiana. They beat a Wyoming team that now has won, you know, how many games? I think 3 since, and now they just lost to BYU in a close one. But
yeah, I'll tell you what. On a neutral field, Illinois would scare me more than Penn State. I think we match up better with Penn State. I don't think Penn State's all that good. I watched most of their game against Central Michigan. They just have some massive issues on offense. Sean Clifford's just not a good quarterback. Their defense has a lot of talent. But I mean, I think we match up really well with Penn State. So if we were not going into a whiteout environment in Penn State, this Illinois game would scare me more than that one. And it still might. I mean, I know the whiteout atmosphere is really difficult to play in, but I just think we match up better with Penn State as a team than we do with Illinois. And I think Illinois is going to be the toughest test of the next few weeks for Minnesota. I really do.
I saw a tweet from a Purdue guy, and he says, "Why does Minnesota always have to be their best when we play them?" And it was one of the funniest tweets I've seen, because it's basically true. Like 2019, we were at our peak. You know, even before then with the Jerry Kill era. I can't think of the game we played. I don't even know the year. Is it 2016? No,
I think Rodney
2017.
Smith went on against them.
Yeah, where we just lost to them. I mean, we were good that year too. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny, but going back to the Big Ten West, out of Illinois, I have to give the nod to Wisconsin, but the Big Ten West just does not scare me this year. Like none of the teams do, and that's hard for me to say as a Minnesota fan because we haven't gotten over the Iowa hump. I get it. Everyone's gonna say that they're gonna roll their eyes. You haven't gotten over the Iowa hump yet, but I don't see us with the way we're rolling on offense and the way our defense is humming. There's no, I just don't see a physical way that Iowa's gonna win that game. I get it; they're 3-1 right now, and looking at Wisconsin, they're 2-2, and they could come back and bounce back. But I don't know. I just don't see those two teams. They're not a very good threat to us right now. A lot can change. Don't get me wrong in that time, but we shall see.
Yeah.
Well, speaking
Yeah,
of that,
I like the way we
go ahead, Danner.
I like the way we match up with Iowa, to be honest. I'm really buying into their ugly ass offense, or their offense being ugly, therefore being a huge problem for them. They scored 13 points on offense against Rutgers. Um, Again, classic Iowa, being opportunistic on defense, being opportunistic on special teams. The reason why I feel that we're a great matchup with them is because offensively, Fleck is going to sit on the ball and he's risk averse. Special teams wise, that's something I don't think we've even mentioned on this podcast yet. Wenger's name has hardly came up. Like, you don't see as many just bonehead errors that you saw the last handful of years so far. To use Flex coin, changing his best, I think that Wenger is trending that way. And I think that Iowa is able to beat, shitty managed special teams like Rutgers, how they've been able to maximize on us. Like, I think that Fleck has grown up in the sense that he's not going to sit on the ball and be so risk averse to the point where you lose to Illinois at home last year or Bowling Green. He knows to open it up a little bit, but still, that zone running scheme is unstoppable with all three running backs. And I really think that we're going to end drives scoring points, or at the very least, we're going to use Mark Crawford in that game against an elite defense, pin him within the 20 yards. Good luck scoring, Iowa, because I honestly think that we win that game in a blowout. And against Illinois, I don't know if I'm as high as you guys on Illinois, but what I am high on is Brett Bielema. I think that he's a really good coach. I don't really care what happened in Arkansas with him. That was years ago. Because what I saw last year in Illinois, pretty impressive. What they're doing this year looks really good. So, and then Wisconsin, the other threat that we kind of agree that top three right now in the West besides us. I, I like how we match up with them too. I don't think that's going to be a blowout by any measure. But I love how we match up with the Badgers. I think Leonard's going to throw everything that he has at us. Graham Mertz looked like dog shit against Ohio State. Given it's Ohio State, but those throws had no steam on them. He threw one pick six that was so bad. I had no idea what route combination they were running. I don't know where he was trying to throw the ball. He threw it so poorly that the guy that tried to pick the ball off, I think, was even confused.
I'm saying this right now on the record. Paul Chris looks so bad, and Wisconsin looks so bad against Minnesota that he gets fired to PJ Fleck and the Gophers.
That might be a hotter take.
Jim Leonard is going to be the head coach, the next head coach of Wisconsin, which scares the absolute. I'm not going to say it because I don't want this to be explicit. He scares the living bleep out of me as a coach because he's a very, very good coordinator. That
I
being
don't know.
said,
I think we've seen coordinators who are really good take over head coaching gigs and
oh,
not have
absolutely.
Yeah,
success. So
Absolutely. It's just the optimism,
Pittsburgh
you know.
football.
He's a
Yeah,
very, very good coach on his side of the ball. He knows what
yeah.
he's doing.
You'd have to see who his coordinators are. You'd have to see
Right,
his
absolutely.
recruiting. I
I'm
mean,
just saying I think Paul
yeah.
Christie's gone. I think PJ Fleck buries him.
well, I think we would all love to see that, but before we get to any of those opponents, we've got to face Purdue this upcoming Saturday. It's homecoming for the Gophers. We're striping out the bank. There should be if not a sellout, darn near one. It sounds like ticket sales have picked up here, so I think it'll be a pretty raucous environment on Saturday. What do you guys think we need to do to continue this success against Purdue?
Yeah, well, I'm just gonna say right now. I talked to Mike. I can't think of his last name. Who runs? Why can't I think of it? Anyways, he runs part of like the ticket sales part of it, and he said we're on track for a sellout. It's, I mean, he was really close today, looking at Tuesday, September 17th, 27th or whatever. We're very close to a sellout, which is good. But I think just being there and showing up as a fan base and being loud and rambunctious like we can be every year since PJ Fleck has been the head coach, our student section and our fan base has gotten more and more into it. And I'm not gonna say Big Game Boomer is a good, uh, you know, comparative thing to look at, but he's given us a lot more credit since PJ Fleck has taken over. Like I have
Sure.
him as a friend on Twitter. He talks about it all the time, and I said, yeah. I mean, I remember going to games when Jerry Kill was here. It's just a totally different environment. And, whether you're a Vikings fan or not, or anything like that, like Vikings games are very fun. Don't get me wrong. I was just at the Packers Vikings game, a couple weeks ago. But the college environment, when you get a fan base going into it and getting into it, it's very fun. And that's just going into this game. That's just what that's my biggest thing right now is just have fun with it as a fan. Let the players know that you're here. Let's sell out the bank. Let's stripe it out. Let's let them know we're here.
I love it, Corey. I think it's going to be close to a sellout as well. On the football side of things, I think Purdue is a team that we match up with possibly better than anyone else in the West. And I feel a little bit bad for Brum. He's had a lot of weird quarterback injuries, just weird stuff in general. And I feel like Fleck has kind of just beat him on the field. I think he's beat him in the luck category as well. And I think that all of the stars are going to align for just an absolute butt kicking on Saturday because Purdue, I mean, King Doru, I think his name is, that kid can run the rock. They
He
won't do it.
he's out.
Yeah, so I mean, classic Purdue. They're derailed by injuries, but whoever I feel like there's been times where they've been able to gash us on the ground. They don't. Um, whether Aiden O'Connell plays or not, like I just I look at the speed of our secondary. I look at the guys in their run fits, guys, not letting people moving the chains on them. Beanie Bishop, Ryan Stapp, just playing with their hair on fire. Like you have Justin Wally as your turnover guy. You've got two safeties that look like Cam Chancellor back there, um, for lack of a better comparison. But I just I think it's got all the ingredients for a blowout, and all the complaints about Gopher football being ranked 21, 20, whatever. It's going to keep climbing because I think that Fleck he treats every single week as a Super Bowl. And you brought up the NFL example with the Vikings. Packers fans will say, hey, like, that's your Super Bowl, or the Eagles were saying, like, that's your Super Bowl to beat us, whatever. With Fleck, I feel like he totally turns that diss into just being so in the moment that the present moment is what matters over everything. That Purdue is going to be these guys' Super Bowl for this week until next week, but they're going to be so locked in. I think they're going to win 52-14, something along those lines. I think it's going to be big.
Well, and sorry, Matty. I'm just gonna say one more thing before you go on. But adding on to that, I think geez, I just lost my train of thought. Matty, go ahead. Sorry.
No worries. So, Jeff Brom was speaking at his press conference, and I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but he said this team that we're
Yeah.
playing on Saturday is the most talented team we will have played this season, which stood out for two reasons for me. One, Jeff Brom hates PJ Fleck. So for him to give that type of compliment to a PJ Fleck team,
Absolutely.
that was painful for him to do, but that team really has to be dang good for him to give that compliment. But secondly, Purdue has played Penn State. They played them in week 1, and they almost
Number 11, Penn State.
yeah, they almost beat them, and we're right there. And here Jeff Brom is, and I don't think it was coach speak. I really don't. I think he was saying, this is the best team that we've played. I truly believe that they're a complete
He
team,
ba-
offensive and defensive side of the ball.
he verbatim. He basically said for 15 seconds, like probably like a minute or two, about our offense, talking about our offense, how good they are, how good efficiency they are, and everything. And then he goes, and their defense is one of the best in the country. Like, no one gives them credit for it. And it's like, okay, he is setting himself up for, like, if we get blown out, this is why.
At least he was ahead of it, right?
Well, I think that's what's going to happen. To Daner's point, I just don't see a world where unless the Gophers just come out completely flat, where this is even a remotely competitive game. You look at Purdue as a team. They rely upon scoring more points than their opponent, and not just in the traditional sense. Obviously, if you score 7, the other team scores 0, you win. But I mean, they need to put up 30 or 40 points every game to win, because they haven't been a defensive team for, well, basically since Brom came to that school to coach. So they're a team that relies on their offense to win, and specifically they rely on throwing the ball. And they're going to have two issues there. One, their starting quarterback Aiden O'Connell is banged up. We don't know if he's going to play at this point, but my guess is he probably doesn't play this week. I think that Brom looks at the big picture for the season and says it's not worth throwing him out there against a top 10 defense of the country, and possibly risking getting him more hurt for the rest of the year. So they're either going to be without their quarterback or have a banged up version of them. But two, our secondary is a strength of our defense. I mean, the front sevens played really well, but the back end of our defense is absolutely incredible, and they keep everything in front of them. They force turnovers. And it really allows that front seven to be really aggressive. And we've seen the rotation on the D line, the rotation at linebacker, and guys being able to fly to the football and be very aggressive against the run. And the whole reason for that is because you can man up on the outside. Terrell Smith has been phenomenal. Justin Wally has been really, really good. And then you've got Tyler Nubin and Jordan Howden at that safety position, kind of cleaning up everything and protecting on the back end. So I don't think Purdue will have success throwing the ball. We know they don't want to run it. So I don't really see a way where they score, I mean, any more than 10 to 14 points. I mean, they might get something because they've got Charlie Jones. They've got Tyrone Tracy, who hasn't done much this year, but he definitely is dynamic. So they've got some weapons. They might get something, but they're not going to score more than than 10 or 14 points.
Well,
And then,
so I want to add on to this. Minnesota, this is a stat that I looked up. Minnesota has held each of its last 11 opponents to under 280 total yards, tying Alabama in 2011 for the longest such streak of any FBS team in the century.
it's impressive.
Yeah,
And I mean, that goes back to last season. So, I mean, you're talking about
right.
some really, really
And
good.
this is Joe Rossi's defense. Are they going to allow Purdue to throw on them for 450 yards, what they want to do, to probably win the game? Absolutely not. I just don't see this. Maybe they can cover the spread. You know, everyone says good teams win, but great teams cover the spread. Maybe they can cover the spread. I don't think there's a shot that Purdue wins this game. Not a shot. Maybe my maroon and gold glasses are showing, but it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's Big Ten football. Anything can happen any given Saturday. But I mean, from a purely analytical and eye test standpoint, I mean, Minnesota is a clear favorite here. You know, I talked about how Purdue's offense should struggle going up against the strength of our defense. But then you look at, even if Purdue's offense does generate offense for the first time in a season and a half against Minnesota's defense, they're still going to have to put up with Minnesota's offense, because Purdue's defense is not very good. I mean, they gave up 30 plus to Penn State. They just gave up 26 to Florida Atlantic, who's not a very good offense. I mean, they're not a good defense. So you're going to see Mo, who, for any Gopher fans who are concerned about Mo's ankle, it sounds fine. Sounds like he's going to be, just 100% going into Saturday. But they're going to have to deal with Mo and Trey and Bryce Williams and Tanner Morgan and all of these offensive weapons that we've been talking about all show long. Minnesota is going to put up 30 or 40 points again here. And regardless of how confident you are in a Purdue offense to move the ball against a Minnesota defense, I just don't see a scenario where they get to 30 points. Yeah, I do think Minnesota is a clear favorite here. I think they win. I think they win pretty easily. But any given Saturday, we as Gopher fans know that that can turn around real quickly.
45-13 is what I got.
I love it. I love it. Any final thoughts on this weekend, upcoming games?
For me, it's just, I think we're going to see Minnesota, a team that is on script, knows what they're doing, they're confident. And to me, when I watch Purdue play football, it's kind of like if you're giving me the sticks in NCAA or Madden or something, and I need to just create a bunch of stuff on my own, it just looks like they're procrastinating on a test. That's what Purdue football reminds me of. To me, that's so just volatile and unpredictable. I even think back to the game where I think Auburn beat them by 50 or 60 points in the bowl game. And that's a Purdue team that we thought was really good. So ever since that, I kind of just wrote off Jeff Brom. I acknowledge that they're unlucky, that things don't go their way, but it happens enough. It's a trend. And Minnesota seems like a team that studies harder, trains harder, prepares better. And Purdue's just going to come into the bank, and they're not going to be prepared, and they're going to get hit right in the mouth.
Well, I want to say a stat, actually. Purdue has never won in the bank. Never.
Yeah.
So let's not underestimate that. They've never won in the bank.
Well, there's a first time for everything, but hopefully it's not this coming Saturday.
Just not on Saturday.
Looking at a couple games, I just want to say a little thing about upcoming games. Iowa and Michigan. The line is now 10.5 Michigan at Iowa, but do they think that Michigan's just not going to be able to score, or do they not think that Iowa's going to be able to score? Like, where is Iowa getting their points from?
I think it's
I
just
think it's just respecting Iowa's
The over
defense.
under is 42 though. That's a lot of points for Iowa to score on defense. But other than that, the other one is
return touchdown, whatever.
yeah. Illinois and Wisconsin. Wisconsin's favored 7 to Illinois at Wisconsin. But I think this is Brett Bielema's. This is his revenge game. This is his first time coming back to Madison as a different coach other than Wisconsin. I think he's got this game scheduled, circled as hard as you can. He's gonna go all out for this game. And the line started at 10 and it's now moved down to 10 or 7. And I think that might be an Illinois cover. I don't know if Illinois is gonna win it, but it's gonna be a close game. That's gonna be a game I'm gonna keep my eye on this week.
Well, we're gonna find out if all the talking heads are for real on Illinois or not. If they go into Wisconsin and win, I think we all have to take them, even more seriously. I don't think there's any doubting that they're a real, going to be a real problem in the West. But we'll see. I don't think Wisconsin's very good, but I think they, will present a tough matchup for Illinois. Braylon Allen. I think Braylon Allen will, shred that defense for 150 plus yards. And the weakness in Wisconsin's defense is their secondary. Their secondary is awful. Their front 7 isn't great, but it's serviceable. So I expect Wisconsin to load the box, try and stop Chase Brown, limit any big plays, and probably grind out like a 21-17 victory, something like that.
Yeah. You guys got anything else to say, or?
Well, that is it. I want to before we wrap things up, just want to give a quick shout out to Darius Taylor, Gopher running back commit. Just an absolute superstar of a player, off to one heck of a start to his season here. We were going to have him on tonight, but being the great class kid that he is, he's doing homework and schedules didn't line up. So Darius will join us later on in the year when schedules allow. But just wanted to give him a quick shout out.
Next week we got Coney Durr on the bye.
We do have Coney Durr coming on next week to give us some further insight to his time at Minnesota, what he sees in the 2023 recruiting class, recruiting in general. So it'll be a fun show next week. Please continue to stick with us, retweet, give us a review, whatever you can do to support us. We appreciate it. But thank you, Gopher Nation, and enjoy homecoming.
Row the boat, sky and on, go Gophers.